everyone, my name is Mika and today we're going to be discussing the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. So I bought this book as soon as it came out and I was really excited for it. I read all the 3 previous books just to prep myself for this book, so I was really expecting a lot from it, and I'm still really conflicted about how I feel. So I guess I'm just going to be going through my thoughts on how I feel about this book. This is a warning that this is going to be a spoiler review, so I will be going through some plot points. So if you don't want to know that, I will also be posting another video that's going to be a spoiler-free review. So just so that you know, you've been warned and there are spoilers ahead. So I guess we can go over a quick overview of the book. It's basically split into 3 parts. The beginning is where Snow, it's really hard to say Coriolanus, so I'm just gonna call him Snow the entire video. So in the beginning, it kind of introduces us to him, and he's poor, and it shows us how devastated the capital is right after the Rebel War, and it's the 10th year of the Hunger Games, and he really wants to be someone remembered, and he's from a really powerful and influential family, but because his parents have died, his family has really dwindled down, and they're not having a lot of money, and they're having a lot of financial problems. So he also lives with Tigress, who is revealed to be his cousin, and he lives with his grandma, who he calls Grandmam, and it's the 3 of them in their apartment, and how the way they describe it is it's very broken down and as magnificent as it once was. There's a lot of cracks in the walls. There's barely any furniture because they've had to sell it to make means end. And sorry, what did I say? Make means end? Make means end. Make means end. To make ends meet. Okay, moment. And Tigress is learning to do her fashion, and she's working for somebody and she isn't really getting paid much, so they're really, counting on Snow as well to do well in school, and he kind of puts that pressure on himself to do well so that he could earn enough money so that he could, bring more to his family name and really do something for himself. So that's how it starts. And then this year is the 10th Hunger Games, and so they realize that nobody really enjoys watching this because, why would you enjoy watching kids fight to the death in the arena? Who knows? But they realize no one's really watching, and so they decide to make this games more interesting. And the way they want to do that is they want to take some capital students from the academy and pair them up with the tributes from each district. So Snow, he originally, I think it's kind of sexist, but he really wants a male from District 1 or 2 or just someone strong, because he just was well, men are more powerful than women, so they'll have a better chance of doing well in the games. And lo and behold, who does he get paired with? Obviously, the girl from District 12. So this is when Lucy comes into the picture, and honestly, she was the best part of this book, to be honest with you. Every single scene she was in, I ate it up. I was great job. I was honestly expecting her to, kind of be like Katniss, and or someone really angry with the districts and things like that, but no. She was her own. She was amazing. So literally when they talk about her at the reaping, she's wearing this rainbow dress because she's amazing, and she pulls out a snake from her dress and she puts it down the mayor's daughter's dress. I was okay, cool, all right, I see you. And then she gets on the stage, gets slapped by the mayor, and then sings a song for the audience, and I'm just this girl, damn. And then when the guy is chosen, she holds his hand and they bow, and I'm just okay, this is interesting. And so that happens. They come to the Capitol. You see that they're very badly treated. They're literally treated like they're animals, and they're brought in like a cattle cart, they're all bound and everything, and then they're kept in the Capitol Zoo to be looked at by all the Capitol people and the children. And it kind of like, oh, like, damn. Yeah, that part was kind of heavy for me, just reading that, you know, they were literally treated like animals. And there's a point in the book where there's an explosion and all like the Capitol people are taken to a hospital, but they send a veterinarian to take care of the tributes. And I'm just like, wow, like this really shows you like the level that they really think that they're inhuman, second class, beastly, animal-like. And Coriolanus has the same views too. Like, he's also like, oh, you know, the Capitol's much better, the districts are bad, the districts are lower class, the Hunger Games are good. And so it's interesting to see his like thoughts challenged when he meets Lucy. So anyways, he sees her, it's the mentor's job to make the person more desirable to the Capitol, and they have to set them up for an interview and like talk about them. And Coriolanus meets someone named Dr. Gall. So she is literally like the mad scientist, an evil scientist, like trope to like the T. She is evil. She is doing all these weird genetic experiments on Avoxes, and she is just downright like freaking scary because she lets the snakes attack his friend, which is insane. But anyways, you realize that Snow's the one that actually came up with betting in the games, and that's what they implement. And so as the games begin, they have these little cuff things where they can get gifts from like people to give their tribute. And then you see the very like early raw versions of the games, and honestly, like they're kind of boring. Like it was really like jarring, you know, when they like string up Marcus on like the pole and his dead bodies. They were like, I was like, okay, that's really dark. But the actual games themselves are really boring, and it's because we're so used to like them having trackers and cameras and seeing where everyone is. But in this one, it's literally like they're all hiding. When they're hungry, a little drone will come and give them food. There might be a little action here and there. So it kind of was interesting to see that like, okay, the games are actually pretty boring, and how much they had to evolve to the games we read about in the actual Hunger Games series. So that happens, and then a bunch of things in the games happen. He cheats for her to win. He kind of gives her his mom's like compact, which I was like, you're gonna get caught. Like as soon as that happened, I was like, why would you give that? You could give other things that she could use to hide rat poison, but no, you give her the one thing that could be pinned back to you. So there's that. And then there's also the whole handkerchiefs with the snakes thing. I was like, Coriolanus. Why? I thought you were smarter than this. And so she does end up winning the games, and they find out that he cheated, and so he's sent to be a peacekeeper. And then that's the third part of the book, where he's a peacekeeper in District 12. So to me, this was the part of the book that I honestly was not that big of a fan. It was interesting to see like the duties of a peacekeeper, but it was just like she kept reiterating over and over again, oh, and then we did this, and then we did that, and then that happened, and I'm just like, I don't care. Like, where is the action? Like, bring on the rest. And so it was a little weird, and nothing happens until like the last 20 pages. And those I was like, oh my god, okay, this took a turn. And I was like, my heart was racing. I was like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? All these things. And then again, spoilers, if you're all the way here, she ends up finding out that he kills his friend Sejanus, which I completely like skipped over. I'll go over it in my later points. And she ends up setting a trap for him with a snake, and he finds out, and then he shoots everywhere, and he thinks he kills her, he doesn't know, and then he runs off again. And I was just like, oh my god. And then Dr. Gall brings him back to like, you know, the Capitol. He gets his university degree, and at this point he's like, you know, a full like murderer now. Like, he doesn't give a fuck. he's just like, okay, like if I kill someone, it is fine. And he literally inherits St. Janice's like stuff. He becomes the heir of the Plinths, and he killed their son. And that did not sit well with me, and I was just like, Snow. So very, very crude. I know I spent a lot of time in the beginning of the book because that's honestly what interested me more than like the third part of it, and I'll go more into like what I liked and what I didn't like. So here is a list of all the things I liked. Number 1, the first thing I really liked is seeing like the history behind the games. So, and the history behind the capital too. You find out that, you know, they were sieged by the rebels for 2 years, and like they were bombed, and people were cannibalizing other people. Everyone has like, you know, a morphling addiction or an alcohol addiction because that's what they use to get through that. And I found that stuff really interesting. The fact that like we get a real backstory of that. And I still want to know, like, if you siege someplace for 2 years, like, how did you lose? That's one of the things I did want to know, is like, how did that happen? And you see that the actual people in the capital as well, like, they don't like the Hunger Games. They think they're revolting. Nobody watches it, which I thought was interesting, because when you see the actual like books, like the original trilogy, everyone's like, oh, this is like a sporting event, we gotta bet on these people, everyone's tuned in, everyone like really loves this. But it's interesting to see that it wasn't always like that. They did have like a moral compass, and they were like, hey, I think this is pretty gruesome, and I think this is pretty wrong. I thought that was cool. And I thought it was cool to also know, as I previously stated, that they really did view the districts as like second-class citizens and like lower than them. They literally viewed them as like animals. As I touched on earlier, like they sent a vet to treat them, and I was like, okay, insane. But all in all, I really did like the little history behind it, and that, you know, Dean Highbottom came up with it. But then in the end, you find out that it's actually because Snow's dad got him drunk, got him to say this entire like theoretically awful idea, and then wrote it all out and gave it to Dr. Gall, and then it became a thing. So inadvertently, Snow's line is what kind of caused the Hunger Games, which is interesting. Number 2, I really liked Snow's slow descent into like him becoming like worse and worse, because it didn't start off like, obviously he didn't start off as like the greatest character. Like he was still like not that great, but it's like his small decisions that slowly like shaped him into who he was and shaped him into like the person he becomes, which I thought was pretty well done. Like it didn't start off with being like, oh, I'm evil and I only do evil things. Like he started off like more morally gray, but soon, like, you know, he starts killing. He has his first killed and the second killed and third kill. He kills Lucy, doesn't give a shit, and then he pretty much, I think it's emphasized that he kills Highbottom at the very end. And I thought that was really interestingly done. I think that like it's cool to see that very initially he's very like moral, and he's like, you know, I killed someone, but like it's really interesting to see him like justify it with himself. Like anytime he does something bad, he'll be like, but it was gonna happen anyway, or I did a good thing by doing this. So I find it really interesting that like he's such a complex character. He thinks that he knows what's best and he can't do wrong, and even if he does do wrong, he mentally justifies it to himself, which was really interesting to read. So I think definitely his slow descent and just like the look into his mind, I enjoyed that. I really did. Number 3, I actually really enjoyed watching the games from like the capital/mentor point of view. I thought that was really interestingly done, because in the original series we only get to see it through Katniss, so she's in the arena. But I thought it was interesting to see it from like the perspective of someone watching, and that was really interesting because again, these games weren't that interesting. Like the whole time he's just really nervous. He's like, oh my god, she hasn't eaten in 2 days, I have to give her food, and they're working really hard to like sell their person to working really hard want to make their person more desirable, so people spend money and give them gifts. And that was interesting to me because I know something they did in the movies, but it's not something that they did in the books. So I thought it was really cool to see like that point of view as well. Number 5, I really liked the different callbacks that we got to the original series. So for example, when Lucy sings the hanging tree song, when they go to the lake, because that's the lake that Katniss always goes with her father to, Snow like instinctively not liking Mockingjays. I thought that was really interestingly done because that ends up being his downfall. So I thought that was pretty cool. Snow giving Lucy a white rose the first time they meet. I thought that was really coolly done because he always wears a white rose in the original series. And also just seeing like the betting on the games thing just come about. I thought that was really cool. It was a nice nod. And the last thing I thought was really cool was like how he subtly tells her to poison the other tributes in the arena, and how that becomes his like signature thing to do later on in life, which is what we learned from Finnick when he talks about him in Mockingjay. Now let's move on to the things I didn't really like. So number 1, I said this before, I wasn't really a fan of the third half of the book. I honestly thought like it was really, really slow. Not much happened here and there, like, but the last, as I said, 20 pages were like amazing. Like my heart was in my like pounding, and I'm like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? And I thought like, yeah, I like that, but the rest of it was weird, and I wasn't a fan of like just how abruptly it ended, because it's like he thinks he shoots her, then he goes back, then he's dropped off to the Capitol, and then it's done. And I was like, oh, okay, that was quick. All right. So I just kind of felt like it ended really abruptly, and that like it wasn't paced as well. So, which is another thing I'll touch on. So the third half of the book really was something that I wasn't a fan of. I think it's cool that he was a peacekeeper at some point in his life, but I just wasn't feeling like that much of a connection with the third part. The first 2 was better, but the third one just took me so much longer to get through just because I genuinely got bored reading it. So that's what I thought. Number 2. So the other thing, which I've seen a lot of people talk about as well, so it's not the first time you're going to hear this, but the pacing of the book is really strange. It's mostly really slow, but then there'll be like a quick scene of action, and then it'll be done after like a page or 2. And it goes back to being really slow, which is kind of strange like as a reader. And it's something that I realized that even Mockingjay and a little bit of like Catching Fire was like suffered with, is that she's just somebody that tells more than shows. So a lot of it is just her explaining, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, but you don't really get to see anything. It's just kind of told to you. And then there'll be a quick scene of action, and then more things are just told to you. And again, the pacing was weird because the first 2 parts were fine. They weren't fine, actually. I'm not going to say they're fine. Like, the first part was a little bit slow. The second part was like a little more quicker because it was the actual games. And then the third part was just like really slow until the end. So that's definitely something to keep in mind if like you want to read this book, is that the pacing is a little bit weird. But yeah, that's all I gotta say. The pacing is really weird. Number 3. So as I touched on earlier is Suzanne Collins. I do respect her as a writer, and I did really like the original trilogy. But I guess this is just something maybe I personally just don't enjoy as much, and other people might. But I feel like every single chapter had like a huge exposition dump. And like, I understand like, you know, putting things here and there in your book and sprinkling it in, or having a huge exposition dump in the beginning and then like carrying on in the book. I personally enjoy like little bits and pieces, but I just feel like she dumps a lot in every chapter. And I'm just like, and I'm not gonna lie, my gripe is still with the third half of the book. Like, a lot of it was just like the schedule of the peacekeepers, and today is Tuesday, so we have hash browns. Like, I don't care. I feel like, you know, some of that could have been cut down. Some of that like wasn't as necessary. We didn't particularly need it. So it's another thing I wasn't a fan of, is how exposition heavy almost every single chapter was. Like, it didn't feel as organic, like you're following a story. It just felt like exposition, 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 exposition. And I was like, okay. Alrighty, so yeah, that's one of my issues. I'm sure other people like wouldn't really mind, and I'm sure other people really like that aspect of the book. It's just for me personally wasn't a huge fan. Number 4. So this is something that I realized is there's quite a few times in the book where Snow like is almost about to die, and like he has all these internal thoughts, and he's like, oh my god, this is it, this is when I die. And the thing is like, because you already know he's alive in like the original trilogy, I just wasn't really feeling it. I was just like, it, like for like a split second I'd be like, oh my god, scared, but then I'd be like, but you're alive, so I already know you're gonna be fine. So I didn't really like, it didn't really work with me, and like I didn't genuinely feel scared. And the way those scenes were written kind of made it feel like she wanted the audience to be genuinely scared with him. Because in the original series, when you read it through Katniss's eyes, you were genuinely scared because people were dying left and right, and so many people lost their lives in that like rebellion. And so in this book, that doesn't really work, where you have all these like really intense scenes. You're not scared for him because you know he's gonna make it. And I don't know, maybe she intentionally wrote it that way, or maybe there's supposed to be tension for the other characters, but because we're only given his internal monologue, I feel like we're supposed to be scared for him, but we kind of can't be because we already know he lives. So yeah, that was one of the things that was kind of strange to me. There's like quite a few of those near-death things that I was like, well, okay, cool. All right, I don't really know what the point of this is, but you know, this doesn't really do anything for me. I'm not scared. Number 5. So I know other YouTubers have definitely like touched upon this, but I felt this as well, is this book had way too many characters. Like we had in the beginning, we're introduced to Snow, Tigress, Grandmam. We're introduced to Highbottom. We're introduced to his teachers. There's like 2 of them. Then we're introduced to Sejanus and his other classmates. And then there's 24 tributes. And it's so hard to keep a track of all these because they don't, like, each of them don't really get a lot of screen time. The only ones that do are like Snow, Sejanus, Dr. Gall, Lucy, and that's pretty much it. Like everyone else like doesn't really get a lot of page time. I said screen time, page time. And so you don't really develop anything for them. And honestly, like I kept mixing these up as I was reading the book. I'm like, I don't even know who this is. Like, okay. And even in the actual games, like you don't even know who the other people are. It's just like the original Hunger Games book where like you knew who some of the characters were, but not all of them, so you didn't really care. But in this one especially, like you only knew Lucy and like the guy she comes with, and Marcus. But other than that, like the other 24, you don't care. You're just like, okay, like the games are going on, all these intense deaths are happening, and I'm honestly like, I don't even know which district they're from, who they are. Like, it felt a lot. And then we get to the last half of the book, or last third of the book. I cannot do math. Last third of the book, and again, we're introduced to more characters, and I'm just like, I can't even remember their names. I think there's a Smiley and there's a Beanpole, but I was like, okay, and there's nothing to really latch onto because I just feel like there's too many and too many to keep a track of. So I wasn't a fan of like the huge character names. So yes, that was one of my gripes with this book. The last one is the actual games. So my issue with this was, before the games even start, we lose quite a few tributes. So one of the tributes kills her mentor, and she is killed because she kills her mentor. We have a couple others that die. Somebody dies of like rat poison, and like I think they start off the games with like at least like 8 of them dead. And in my head, I was like, okay, so are they gonna reap again? Like, what do they do in this scenario? And they just went along with the games with the remaining number of tributes, which I was like, you know, the capital's supposed to be all cruel and, oh, second-class citizens, oh, we're gonna make sure like we do the Hunger Games to keep control of you. So that was weird for me to see that they just didn't reap again. I was like, okay, interesting, you're just gonna send these people. And then as we talked about the actual games, it was boring to read because there's nothing happening. Like, a lot of the book was just, and then more nothing happens, and more nothing happens. Then these two people come out, they get some food, and then more nothing happens. And I'm just like, and this went on for 100 pages. So I was like, okay, there's gotta be more here. So yeah, I wasn't a fan of like the actual games portion, but I do think it was cool to know that, you know, they had to go from that to what it ends up being in the actual trilogy. So yeah, that's the last thing I didn't like. So now I'm just gonna go into like the different characters, or the three that were most prominent to me, and just talk about them as a whole, and then I'll close it on my like final thoughts. So the first person we're going to talk about is President Snow, or Coriolanus Snow in this book. So he is calculative, he is controlling, he is charming, and he is selfish. So I'm sure there's other traits people can use to describe him, but those are the four I chose. So you can tell he's controlling because when he falls for Lucy Gray, like there's never a, oh, I really love her. It's, she belongs to me. She's mine. And it's very like obsessive and kind of disturbing to read. Even when I was reading those passages, because I'm just like, you're not in love with her, you're obsessed with her. And there's a thin line between love and obsession. So I was just like, disturbed to read those. He's very calculative and selfish because in the very beginning, he only wants to use Lucy and have her do well so that he can win the prize to go to university, and he doesn't give a shit what happens to her. He literally just says, okay, I'm gonna try my best and make her look good, and then if she dies in the games, she dies in the games. And that shows you exactly how selfish he is. He only cares about himself. But to her, you know, he comes up to her, he meets her at the train station, he gives her a flower, he goes to meet her every day in the zoo. So he very calculatively does that. Like, he wants her to think he cares about her, even though inside he doesn't really. And then he only starts to care about her when she's finally like, can you actually look at me like I could actually win this thing? And can we actually come up with a strategy so that I could win? And that's when he finally is like, bro, she could win. And he's like, all right, I'm going to try and let her win. And not let her win. I'm going to try and help and do anything I can to help her win. Which I was like, okay, finally. But you could really see how controlling and calculative it is in those kind of things. And the last, definitely charming, because the entire book is just his internal monologues and his internal feelings, and then how outwardly he does something completely different. Like, on the inside, he's always, oh, Sejanus sucks. Oh, Sejanus District 2 scum. Oh. But then on the outside, he's like, but Sejanus, I love you. I care about you like a brother. You mean so much to me. Like, it really takes some level of skill to be that good of a liar and to have that much internally going on in you, but project this person who is loving and charming and caring. I'm not gonna lie, like, that takes a lot of skill. He was definitely like all of those things and more, which is why he does make a very compelling character, but I'm not sure if like 1 year in someone's life is enough to like make them a killer. But again, we could argue that, you know, he descended further and further and further to who he was, which is fair. Snow also reflexively protects himself at all times, and you see it happen twice in the books for sure. The first time is when he sees the snakes and he reflexively drops his handkerchief, and he justifies it to himself by being like, oh, I'm saving her. But in reality, he's saving her because he likes her. He's not saving her for her own good. Same thing with when Sejanus comes in to tell him that he's going to be running away. He reflexively, not even thinking about it, records it on the Mockingjay. And, you know, he sends it to Dr. Gall. He feels a little bad about it afterwards, but then he justifies himself by being like, oh, you know, I didn't want to get caught up with this. I didn't want them to think that I did this. And Sejanus would have gotten caught anyway. So you can tell he's very, like, he cares about himself only. And he always reflexively only protects himself, which you can see in the last act of the book when he actually goes to kill Lucy Gray. Which brings us to Lucy Gray. So the 4 characteristics I chose for her were loyal, fearless, creative, and positive. So she's really, really loyal to her cubby. Like, she's somebody that says, I'm not from District 12 at all. I'm from the Covey. I'm not from any of the districts. I'm this, I'm that. And she's very loyal to like her people, and she enjoys what she does, and she's loyal to Snow. The entire time she tells him, there's nobody else, my eyes are only for you, my heart is only for you, and she gives him everything, which is why it hurts so much more when he betrays her like that. And she is fearless. Like, literally the first scene we see her in, she has a snake in her skirt, and she puts it down the mayor's daughter's dress. I was like, what? And in the arena too, like, it takes like fearlessness to actually do what she did to survive. And even in the end, when she realizes what Snow did, she has to be so brave to do what she did and set that trap and try to kill him, because she realized he was a monster and not the person that she believed he was. And oh, that just hurts so much. She was so fearless. And the next is obviously creative and positive. So I feel like these go hand in hand, because she's always so confident and she always puts up that front. Everything's a show. No matter what she does, she's positive and she creatively does everything. There's like a million new songs in the book for her, so you can see her creativity. And no matter what, like, you don't see, unless she's not on stage, you don't see her ever falter, or her persona ever falter. The only time you see her care or be sad is when like they're hanging somebody or things like that. But even in the very end, when she's about to kill Snow, she doesn't let her personality falter. She goes, I'm gonna go get some Katniss for us, and she leaves. And then he figures all this out internally and he goes to kill her and all these things, but she kept that up, and she kept that act up, which I was like, damn girl, like, damn, you came to that realization, and holy. So she, amazing character. Like, oh, I really hope, because it's open-ended, that she survived. But again, we'll go over things that are still unexplained at the very end of this video. And the last character I'm going to talk about is Sejanus, because he is an important part from like the second to the end of the book. And I would say he's conflicted, he's moral, he's brave, and he's stupid at times. So conflicted because you can see it in the very beginning of the book, where, you know, he's from the districts, but he's living in the capital, and he gets paired with his classmate for the Hunger Games. And I'm just like, that's insane. Like, imagine being partnered up with someone you know, and you know that they're gonna die. That was insane. I was like, oh my god, this boy. And he literally just wants to go back to District 2. Like, he's such a good person. Ugh, did not deserve what happened to him. And he is very moral. He even fights Dr. Gall and tells her, oh, you know, like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, how can you justify, like, killing these people? All these things. Like, he tells it to her face. And I was like, damn, son, respect. You can actually say what you feel to someone of authority. But he also does that because his dad can kind of get him out of everything. But actually, no, I don't think he does that for that reason. I think he does anything rash, and anything rash he does has no consequences, because his dad just at the problem and then it's good. So yeah, he was a very, like, I really liked him as a character, and I felt really bad when he died. But it comes to my last two, which are he's brave and he's also stupid at the same time. So you first see this when he goes into the arena and stands over Marcus's body, and like Snow has to go get him, and he's like, no, I want to stay here with him. If they kill me, they kill me. I'm gonna make a statement. And I'm just like, bro, there are other statements to make. They might not even air this. Like, how could you not think that? And he gets out of the arena, and I'm like, okay, thank God. And then he's in District 12. And again, he's like, you know, I want to be a medic. I want to help people. And I'm like, yes, say, Janice, go help people. And then he does more treacherous things where he's like, okay, we're going to leave and all these other things. And I'm just like, Sejanus, Sejanus, Sejanus. And he also trusts Snow, which, oh, Snow plays him so well. And I'm just like, oh my God. So well. And he's literally welling with tears when he's like, I consider you like my brother, so I'm gonna tell you. And I'm just like, Sejanus, no. And he ends up dying because he he doesn't think his plan through. Like, what do you think you're gonna do? You're gonna run to the north with guns. All right, and then what? You're gonna starve to death. Like, he doesn't think his plans through, which is why I put that he's brave and stupid at the same time. Like, I loved him, but I was also like, some of his decisions, I'm like, So yeah, that's my analysis on Sejanus. Loved him, but he was an idiot. So I still have, after reading all of this, some questions that are still lingering. So one question is definitely, what happened between Snow and Tigress? Because we see in Mockingjay that they're not like close anymore. Like, she's literally outcast and all these things. And in the book, they never showed anything that shows that they had a fallout. They always had a good relationship up until the end of the book too. So that was something I was like, wait, why weren't we showed this? So I thought that's something that's still unresolved. And I would like to know what happened between them. Like, does she find out that, oh, he's actually murdering people? And she's like, hey, I have a conscience, and so I'm gonna distance myself from you. We don't know. This book ended really abruptly, so there's a part of me that thinks there could be a sequel, and we might find out in the sequel. We don't know. The second question I really wanted to know is, because I thought this book was going to be more about how he kind of claws his way to power, but it doesn't really show how he became president. It just kind of shows, okay, he had to work really hard, he won the games with his girl, then he becomes a peacekeeper, then he goes to the university, and then he's interning for the game makers. And I'm like, okay, but how does he become the president? Like, that's something I want to know, because that was the one cool part of Mockingjay, when Finnick says, oh, you know, our Coriolanus Snow had to claw his way to power because he wasn't born with it, and he had to poison people to get there. And I was like, that would be interesting to read about. Like, I would love to read about how he actually got there. So that's still unresolved. And the third question for sure is, did Lucy survive? Because she came up with the Hanging Tree song, and, you know, Katniss sings it. So there's a part of me that thinks she survived and she's Katniss's grandmother from her dad's side, because her dad's the one I think that teaches her the song, I think, from what I remember, and then it's passed down to her. And if that is really true, that would be amazing, because literally Lucy's heir killed Snow, like killed her betrayer. That would be, that was such an amazing tale if she did survive and she gave birth, and then Katniss went into the games and Katniss won like her grandmother, and Katniss killed her grandmother's lover and betrayer. That would be amazing. So anyways, now we're at the end of the video. So the reason I'm conflicted about this book is because I did enjoy it, but I also kind of thought it was unnecessary. Like, and hear me out, okay? Like, it was interesting. I thought the history of it was fine, but I really don't think it added that much to Snow, in my opinion. I was more thinking like it's gonna show his climb to power and all these things, but like it really didn't. So it's kind of where I'm at right now, where I'm like, I don't think that this book was necessary, like in the trilogy or as a prequel at all. Like, I really don't think it added that much to his character. But the parts I did like were like not even about him, were how the games like were before and how those things changed. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I was into. And just like the quick nods, like the Hanging Tree song, things like that. So that's why I'm having such a hard time, like if I enjoyed it, like would I recommend it. So like, because I'm so like conflicted and meh about it, I think I'd give it like a 3 or 3.5 stars. Like, I'm still making up my mind, but it would be around there. If you're a die-hard Hunger Games fan, yeah, you should go check out the book. But if you're someone that doesn't really care, I don't really think you're missing much, because I don't think it really did add that much to Snow's character. But that's just my opinion. I know there's a lot of people that love the book and they think that it was great to see this behind the scenes of Snow. So yeah. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Did you like it? Did you not like it? What did you think about Snow? What did you think about Lucy? Who is your favorite character? And yeah, and if you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to me if you want to catch my other videos that I'm going to be posting. And you can also comment down below, as I I said before, and let me know what you liked. I will also be coming out with more content, and so you could be on the lookout for those. And yeah, that's it. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope you're all staying